And we're back. Welcome to another episode of Mondays with Mooch. Today we're going to talk about Clubstyle, the Clubstyle pages on social media, the way people set up their bikes, and why they set them up that way. And today my guest is Loren, former member of the Hells Angels, which is a club that was notorious for setting their bikes up like that and pretty much inventing that style. So we're going to have him jump on here and we're going to talk about Clubstyle. Thanks for joining us, guys. And remember, if you like the page or you like this episode, check out the other ones. Make sure you like and follow Mondays with Mooch on YouTube, OG__Mooch on Instagram. Share it with your friends. And if you haven't read my book yet, it's called The Ride of My Life, and it's available on Amazon and anywhere else that major books are sold. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Mondays with Mooch. As I said before, I've got Loren on with us today. Loren's an ex-member of the Hells Angels. He's been riding motorcycles for a long time, and he runs a shop called Syndicate. And I'll have him explain a little bit about that. So what do you do at the shop? What's the shop about? How long has it been started? Stuff like that.
So Street Syndicate, MFG, I've owned for about 6 years now. That started out as making motorcycle parts, fairing brackets for Arlen Ness fairings. And it's kind of evolved into now a full-fledged shop. So we do full-service motorcycles, custom builds, fabrication, welding. We work on pontoon boats, dirt bikes. you name it, they bring it in.
Awesome. And I noticed you work on a lot of FXRs and Dynas and stuff like that. And today we're going to start talking about, club style and what it means. But you work, you guys do a lot of work on FXRs and Dynas and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. I've done a lot of work on FXRs and Dynas over the years. I love them.
Cool. And you have an FXR now, right?
Currently, yeah, 1992.
Nice. How long have you had that?
I've had this one for a little under 8 months. Then before that, I had one for about 4 years. I've always had one. I've always had one on lock.
Awesome. You've had 3 FXRs over the years and then several Dynas. So I'm back on an FXR now.
Hey, you got it. FXRs are the best.
So one of the reasons I wanted to do this episode is on Instagram and social media. There's a lot of pages popping up all over the country. I'm wearing a shirt for it now. Clubstyle Illinois. There's Clubstyle Georgia, Dixie Moto. There's a lot of these groups that are focused on quote unquote club style. And I wanted to kind of get your take on, first of all, where did that term come from your knowledge?
Well, in my experience, club style comes from what you set your bike up as and the reason why you set your bike up that way. So, flashback 10 years ago, people were putting T-Sport fairings on bikes and calling it club style, high T-bars. Maybe in your world, club style looked a little different, but I think it all comes from the same thing, really just efficiency on a motorcycle, tall bars, get that wind off your face, and just mob. That's to my knowledge and my experience where I see it as making your bike look a certain way, and then it kind of just popping up everywhere, and everyone's getting that club style look, and then just rolling with it. But it's changed. It used to be the T-Sport fairings, and now club style is FXRT looking fairings and FXRP looking fairings and Lowrider ST, you name it.
Yeah, I think it definitely evolves. And from my understanding, San Francisco Bay Area Hells Angels way back in the 60s and 70s were lifting their bikes up, making them narrow, getting mid controls, all stuff for handling, like in and out of traffic, essentially almost setting it up like a sport bike, I guess would be my goal. Is that kind of what you were told, or that's a history as well?
Yeah, from my knowledge, Ventura Hells Angels was the first one to put that Arlen Ness fair in high and tight. That was the Ventura style. It was right up there. Tall T-bars so you could split lanes in traffic, mid controls. Pretty much, setting up like a sports bike.
And what's the benefit to setting your bike up, in club style? So like you said, tall bars, mid controls. Why are people doing that?
So you can split lanes going 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, and that a lot of times you're seeing they're lifting them up or mid controls because it improves cornering. Like we said, it makes it similar to kind of a sport bike almost, right? When you're riding it. Or I know, when more and more Mongols started riding them, they would always compare it to what it was like riding a dirt bike growing up. But it was a real similar riding position almost as your dirt bikes.
For sure. If you think about it, when you're sitting on, let's say, an old road glide or, like a soft tail forward controls, you're not ready. You're not ready to hit a corner at 100 miles an hour. You're not ready to split lanes at 100 miles an hour. Some people might be, but when you have the mid controls and your bike is raised up, you're pretty much ready for anything.
Absolutely, for sure. I think that's a good way to explain it too. And plus, you might want to try and outrun law enforcement or race with your buddies, but having a fast, nimble bike, I think seems to be the point. Another cool thing I've noticed too is especially historically, but it's different by region too, or by club, right? Like when I first joined the Mongols, it was lowriders, street, heritages, street glides, and some of the early guys that got into those Dynas and FXRs, we'd all catch shit for having Hell's Angel bikes or White Boy bikes.
Sure.
But in Oregon, there was at one point almost every Mongol had either a FXR or Dyna, and so we had just a pile of takeoff parts to swap when we were on run trips. Everyone had the same bike, so it was so cool, like as far as tools and parts. So I think there was an effective method behind that too. But like so in the club you rode with, and then guys you were around, everyone pretty much have that club style.
Yeah, I think in the later years, the early years it went from Dynas, FXRs. But I think where the crossover really was from club to club was the road glides. I mean, I think everybody started catching on that road glides were the bike to ride cross country. I mean, period.
Yeah, those performance baggers I think are huge right now, and I think I think both of us have seen that it's based in that club style still, though. It's how can we set this bagger up more like the FXRs or FXRTs, which is also why we see these fairings coming back into play. When I first started trying to set a bike up like this was pre-Sons of Anarchy, so a lot less companies made T-bars or fairings, or there wasn't a lot of options. I knew like Arlen Ness and then the Harley quarter fairing, unless you could find like a takeoff T-Sport or FXR, any of the FXR stuff, most of the people took those off and got rid of them back in the day. So finding them was actually pretty difficult. And I think now, the aftermarket, there's probably 50 different fairing companies, T-bar companies. It's changed quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I first started out, man, there was like 2 companies, and that's it. And a lot of things you were ordering, it was from the catalog. And there was a couple people that were doing it. They were doing it right. They were setting their bikes up right, and they were selling them, and they would collect parts. I mean, I remember this dude told me he was collecting T-Sport bags from trash cans at dealerships. I mean, just straight up just grabbing them. So he held on to them over the years, and he had like 100 sets.
Man, imagine that. How sweet would that be?
Wild.
At one point once T-Sports started really getting back into popularity, I remember that the bags were selling for close to the same price as we were buying the bikes for initially.
Yeah.
At one point we were buying, like in Oregon, we were getting FXRs, $2,500, $3,500. And this was like, mid 2000s. So this wasn't a super long time ago, but we were getting all these barn finds or like older guys who were getting out of the scene or, their dad died. And we were buying FXRs for under $5,000. And I mean, trying to find a good running FXR now for under $5,000, I think is about impossible.
It's crazy. And more people are catching on too. I mean, I've been checking Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. I mean, everywhere that I can think of, and everyone seems to be catching on. Even the old dudes that have had their bikes since they bought it brand new, they're catching on too, because you cannot find anything for under $5,000.
Absolutely. One of the things, I got off topic a little bit, but one of the things I wanted to kind of bring up too was how each clubs in each region has a different style. So especially these old school clubs, but like Brother Speed in Oregon was well known for the way they built their FXRs. They stretched the frame, they kind of have that tall Frisco style. Obviously the Frisco Angels had that. Ventura had the tall headlight, the taller front end, tall headlight. The Goose and Forasteros had their style. And then I think now, I still think that's around, but I think now that's what's shifting into that like bagger scene. But what are some of the cooler styles that you always liked?
Man, I really like the old school chopper styles. When I would see someone roll up on a chopper with parts from so many different bikes, I thought it was always cool. And people riding their bikes from, let's say, California to, the Midwest just on a chopper, I thought that was always cool. And I've always had a big thing for FXRs. And man, when I see someone riding an FXR cross country, that's the coolest thing to me. And I'm a huge fan of the FXRT. I'm a huge fan. So when I see someone traveling with that bike, I think that's awesome.
I really love those FXR choppers. Like I said, like the Brother Speed got really big into that, or the Frisco style FXRs. Other than the small gas tank, just because I live in the Midwest and you got to ride really far between stops. But I love that look, man. I think that's a classic club style setup.
Chopper FXR, man, is the way to go. It's so cool seeing people ride those things cross country. I don't know how they do it. I couldn't do it. I'm spoiled now with a bagger.
Yeah, for sure. I think a cool side product of this whole club style popularity is the ease to get parts now, right? Yeah. There's a lot of companies that make cool parts. Initially it was like Scotty and West Coast T-bars, and because he was one of the few people doing it, you had to wait a long time to get it. Obviously, if you were in the Mongols, you probably didn't want to support that club, so you had to find another company. I remember it was a Forbidden Machine that was making the Pro Taper sleeves so that you could run dirt bike bars, and that was really big for a long time.
Yeah.
So it was kind of cool, like, being in that era where we've seen the evolution of what club style is, right?
Yeah, I mean, it popped up. I want to say 2015 was when Instagram started to really get popular as far as, these pages popping up, people having the availability to make different parts, or at least us being able to see other parts being made. Because unless you were around or you were in that area, I mean, you wouldn't really know about Forbidden, or you wouldn't know about, X or Y or whatever, that's being made. You would know about what your buddy was running, where you were, that kind of stuff. So I think in 2015, the huge growth of Instagram and people being on Instagram and promoting their parts really helped the evolution of, club style bikes being produced.
I agree. And back kind of in our era, it was at club runs or bike events where you would see cool bikes and then, dude,
Yeah.
where'd you get that? Or, hey, who fabbed that? Or, let's having that one-on-one conversation, which I do miss that, like that in-person checking out bikes. But then I also agree with you, like there's so many forums and group pages and, all sorts of stuff now where you can see what people think are cool, where to get stuff, how to build stuff. So I think that's been a big change too.
Absolutely. I mean, I loved, going up to someone talking about their bike. Hey, how'd you do this? What'd you use? What bars are those? And now it's like, oh, cool. You got an HPI pipe. Awesome.
Right. Exactly.
That's it.
I would say that is kind of the downfall too, is when it was harder to get and there was less products available, I thought we saw more variety. Where
Sure.
now,
Absolutely.
because there's a popular brand that's out, or like I said, HPI or something, and it's like, cool, it's a cool exhaust. It's not, sorry, HPI, but I've seen some numbers. It's not necessarily the best one out there, but it's a good, well-made exhaust, but it's so popular. So it's like, that's what we see.
Sure. Absolutely. They've done a good job of trying to keep it. I don't know if they do it intentionally, but rather exclusive, right? Like you can't just mass produce those and buy 100 of them, like let's say Two Brothers. I mean, you can get those in 2 days off of, on online or in a catalog or something like that. Just, so the exclusivity is not really there. But HBI, you have to wait, 8 months or however long you get one. So
yeah, I think it's a bit of a flex to have one, right? It's like kind of the cool guy flex.
Yeah, it's a huge flex to have an HBI pipe.
And similar with Thunderheader, we've talked about it off air numerous times before. But growing up with Dynas and FXRs, I've always loved the Thunderheader. Again, don't think they're the best manufactured exhaust out there, but they sound the best. You can do it. They obviously perform well. But same thing, they're hard to get. They're expensive, and especially used. I mean, they're like gold trying to come up with.
Yeah, I agree. I have 3 Thunderheaders because every time I see one, I'll buy one. I love Thunderheader. Thunderheader is my favorite pipe. Period. I love to chop them 6 inches, 6.5 inches, make your own bracket for it, and boom. It doesn't perform the best, but I'm not chasing numbers anymore. I don't care. I used to. I used to want to build the biggest, baddest motor and, this and that. Now it's just, I want it to be reliable. I want it to be fun. That's all I care about. But Thunderheader, in my opinion, is the best sounding pipe.
So I think you bring up a good point, especially from 2 guys that were in clubs that rode a lot, put mileage on. One thing I'm seeing that's popular on these social media pages is big motor builds and the high, dyno shootouts. But what I remember from club life was reliability was more important than speed. I mean, of course, we wanted fast bikes, and most people always did a cam or something, cam exhaust. But these big motor builds, man, I always saw it as a deterrent because you couldn't really rely on it. There was a lot of things that could go wrong. We're riding. I mean, you were out in Arizona. As the West Coast, we're riding in the heat. But yeah, speak a little bit about that. Or like, what do you think has changed there?
Yeah, I mean, when I first started prospecting, I had Dyna. It was 120 cubic inch. Man, it was the biggest flex. I thought it was so cool, and then it's not so cool when your prospect broke down on the side of the road. You don't want that. So that's when I went and bought a bagger. But yeah, you do not want to break down. Period, for multiple reasons. I mean, ego, embarrassment, but also safety. You don't want to be sitting on the side of the road. You always want to be an asset, not a liability. And if your bike's constantly breaking down, it's not an asset anymore; it's a liability. So I've seen a big change, coming on that reliability is more important because you see these guys and they're taking road trips, they're doing this, and, while they're riding from their house to the bar or the restaurant, and they got the big 128s and the 131s, that's cool. But as soon as you start crossing state lines, it's not as cool anymore. You start breaking down.
Absolutely. And I would say, out of all the stuff that's wrong with club style, that would be my one complaint is we see these performance baggers and club style setups, but they're not really being ridden. You see them, I go to Daytona, these places, and you see them getting trailered over there. And I mean, to me, the whole purpose of club style is that it's a rideable bike. Like we build these to ride, because club style is club life, right? When we were in clubs, we lived on our bikes, we traveled all over. So you had to have a dependable, reliable bike. And to me, that's what club style really is, like set up for a purpose.
I agree. Purpose built 100%. I mean, you want to have a purpose wire on the road. Everything has to be purpose built. Your suspension, your motor, everything. Your gas tank. You're like you said, you don't want to be riding around with a little peanut tank and be, out of gas every 50 miles.
Right. And, I think Sons of Anarchy, like we said, played a role in that. I do think, that still goes back to the Hells Angels, right? Sons of Anarchy was based off the Hells Angels and their style, and that's why they set the bikes up like that in the TV show.
Sure.
And I would say my pet peeve on that, and all club affiliations aside, is when people don't understand what club style is or why it's set up like that, and you see this mixed matched crap. Like you see a sport fairing and ape hangers, or T-bars and short shot exhaust, or forward controls. That sets me off, man.
Yeah. I think short shots and forward control set me off anyway.
Yeah, that's true. But I think, if people miss that, at that point, to me, it's people trying to get into fashion and not understanding the function. And I think that's probably the difference.
You're totally right on that. I think a lot of the motorcycle culture has become a fashion show. I think that we've somehow along the way lost the roots of what this actually means, what this is for. We're not setting up our bikes with tall T-bars because, it's the most comfortable, but the most narrow is the best way to get through traffic because you're not going to be hitting mirrors with your hands. You want them narrow so you can be splitting lanes. And, not to mention when you're riding in a pack, I mean, we rode real tight, 3 and 5, really close to the guy next to you and really close to the guy in front of you. And you want to be able to be comfortable and functional and be ready for anything, be ready to split lanes, go from 2 lanes to 1. Like you want to be ready. So that was the purpose. And now we've kind of lost that,
Absolutely. I do think, and that kind of is my next segue, is what you think of these club style pages. Because my opinion is, if they're done right, a lot of these guys are putting on events, putting on rides. And I think it's kind of like the same reason a lot of us joined motorcycle clubs. It's getting like-minded guys together that like the same style of bike. They're doing these runs and these rides, and they get to show up in person like we talked about and talk about their parts and stuff like that. So how do you kind of view these club style pages?
And when they first started popping up, I didn't think too much of them. I was just like, it's kind of wannabe, whatever. But, man, Clubstyle Tennessee does a great job of doing exactly what you're saying. They're doing rides. They're riding their bikes. They're building their bikes. They're going to events to support other people, other Clubstyle pages as well. I mean, that's the most important. You get Clubstyle Tennessee riding out to Illinois, support Clubstyle Illinois. It's like that's what it's for, supporting each other. And that's exactly like you said, why we got into Clubstyle in the first place.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the fact that I've really seen how they all support each other, too. I don't see a lot of drama or competition between the different regions or states. They all seem to really work together, put on events together, support each other's events, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's cool, too. I think coming together and just finding a common ground of loving motorcycles, I mean, they don't have any politics. They don't have any bullcrap to deal with. It's just riding motorcycles and the love of it, and I think they're doing a pretty good job. At least Clubstyle Tennessee. I've seen Clubstyle Illinois do some cool stuff. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, man, and I'm a little jaded because we came from club life, and not that I didn't like it, it was great, but not being able to still ride and hang with people and talk bikes and not have to deal with the negative things that come with being in a club, I think is cool. I have seen or heard from guys that are still in clubs that sometimes they think maybe these club style pages are, like you said, kind of perpetrating or biting off style, but I think once you get to know these guys or do the events, I don't think that's the case. I think they're seeing that there's these purpose-built bikes and they like the purpose, and that's why they're riding them. I've seen a lot of these guys come from the sport bike scenes or the stunt scenes, and that's why they ended up on Dynas and FXRs.
Sure. I think they're doing a good job of bridging the gap of people that, they're more than weekend warriors, but they're not at the level of wanting to join a club for whatever reason. Maybe they don't want to deal with politics, or, maybe they like having their free time or whatever it may be. But Clubstyle pages are doing a good job of bridging the gap between the weekend warriors and the guys that want to get together with other dudes and ride.
Absolutely. So in your club, what was the most popular bike?
Dyna, for sure.
Dyna, yeah. And I've seen a lot. I mean, that's where I think a lot of the FXR style came from, was from the Angels too, for sure.
I definitely think a Dyna was the most popular.
Do you still think it is, or do you think the Road Glide's taken over?
I think the Road Glide's taken over, honestly. I think once you set a Road Glide up right, and I'm biased because when you set a Road Glide up right and you get it to perform well, there's no better motorcycle, in my opinion. I mean, it even beats an FXR, and I don't even want to say it, but it does.
Yeah, and for me, it does just from the more reliability purpose. I love my FXR. It's 8-inch Evo. You know, it will run forever, but it's old. So if you go on long trips, you know, things rattle, break off. You know, I don't know how many exhaust brackets have broken. Where with a newer Road Glide, you know, just smoother. I think I rode my Road Glide from Illinois to Oregon and back. I think I did about 5,000 miles that trip, and it was comfortable. It was fun. It was a good time. I could pack plenty of stuff on it. I had like a detachable tour pack. I would say you know, growing up around club stuff, I used to hang out with the outsiders in Oregon first, and they were, if you bought a stock bike, they would call you a store-bought so-and-so, right? Like it wasn't cool. But no one in Oregon had baggers at the time other than like the Harley owner group guys. And, you know, it was crazy to see how quick that lifestyle kind of started changing. I think baggers got cooler too as far as how they look. But I think people started understanding that for the purpose, like we keep saying, is purpose-built. You know, set up Road Glide is perfect for club life or just traveling life or the guys that ride all the time.
Yeah, big time. Yeah, it used to have a stigma, you know, like, oh, just old dude with a bagger, you know, but then it started becoming more popular. Just like anything else, right? Like things catch on, but then you start doing it right and you're like, oh, wow, okay, that is the best motorcycle. You know, there's a reason why these guys are so comfortable riding thousands of miles.
I still don't think they're ever going to look as cool as like a setup Dyner FXR. And like when I'm on one and show up at a bike night or something like that, I would always prefer to be on the Dyner FXR. Sure. But as far as function, I think that's the setup.
I agree. Yeah, having a Road Glide on lock is good. But you're right, man. I have more pride when I ride an FXR longer distances than when I ride, you know, Road Glide longer distances. Because you expect a Road Glide to do that. But when you show up on an FXR and you rode 1,000 miles, that's pretty cool. I mean, you can't beat that. You know, because there's a lot more love.
Absolutely. And I think it's a little more rare now. Like you're in a parking lot at a bike show. Anytime I'm on the FXR, at least one person knows what it is and says rad bike. Where when you're on another black Road Glide, you know.
Yeah. I think the biggest difference for me is when you're riding a Road Glide, you're riding on a Road Glide. But when you're riding an FXR, you're riding in an FXR.
Absolutely. That's a solid way to put it. Absolutely.
You're locked in. And so I love it, man. Just being locked in like that, I love it. So I would prefer, man, if I had my way, I'd ride my FXR everywhere, but they just break sometimes. You know, you got to fix it.
Yeah. So to wrap up with the club style stuff, what do you think is like, in order to officially be club style, what are the parts you think people should be putting on those style of bikes?
Man, my opinion is put the parts on your motorcycle that you find to be the most comfortable, that you like the look of the best, and that's going to allow you to travel the most distance comfortably, period. That's what it's come to, in my opinion, now, right? But if you want like a blanket answer, put a T-Sport fairing with some T-bars and a Thunderheader in your club style.
Yeah, for sure. And, you know, there's so much nice suspension out there now, too.
Sure.
And with the newer bikes, honestly, like the M8s and stuff, I don't think the factory suspension's that bad, so I haven't like been in a rush to change that stuff. I do think these piggyback shocks are, again, like we talked about, more of a flex. You know, they're race shocks built for racing. I know some people, we all know people that can smash, right? But there's few people I know that like are outperforming their shocks. So I do think that you could still do better than stock without having to go there. But I do think that's a good upgrade too when you start riding hard and stuff, is getting some nicer suspension.
Absolutely. That's like more important than your motor or your paint. Suspension, brakes, very important. You know what I mean?
Yeah, on FXR, I always upgrade the brakes right away. To wrap up, so I kind of want to point some more people in the direction of your shop. So we love to know what kind of custom parts you make and like, you know, the stuff that you're kind of popular for.
Yeah, so we make Arlen S fairing bracket. So if you want to get your Arlen S fairing looking high and tight, it raises up 5 inches or it can go, you know, back down to a stock position. So we've been doing that for about 5 years. We make foot pegs. We're going to be making bagger floorboards, kickstand blocks, air cleaner covers. You know, we're pretty much trying to pump out all the good stuff right now.
Awesome. Everything's made there at your shop, right? Or in their area?
Everything's made in the USA. Some stuff is made out here in Tennessee, and then a couple things are made out in Utah.
Awesome. Very cool. So where can people find you if they want to check out the shop or support your Instagram?
Hop on streetsyndicatemfg.com or at streetsyndicatemfg.
Awesome. And I'll put the link down in the description for anyone who wants to check it out.